Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Feel free to share in the chat box where you're calling in from. I'm out here in BC in Langley. It is not raining today, so that's a positive for me. We're just going to give about a few minutes here to let everybody start coming in before we get started. Sunny in Newfoundland. I'm jealous. We are just experiencing rain here in the Lower Mainland. Maple Ridge, hello, fellow BC. Oh, it's nice to see everyone from all over. Lots of sun across Canada. Oh, more rain. So once we get started, you can feel free to pop any questions you might have as we go along the presentation as well. We're going to answer all those at the end. You can also keep discussion going in the chat box. I'll be checking in on that as well. I'll just give it another minute here. All right, we'll get started here. So I want to say welcome to everybody. So welcome to your Life After Cancer conference. So throughout this week, you've been treated to lots of interactive presentations and expert approved tools, tips, and recommendations to help you find your own path to fulfilling life after blood cancer or with chronic blood cancer. So at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Canada, we are proud to introduce today's presentation titled Cancer and Work, Tools and Resources to Help and Support You. Returning to work after cancer can leave you with a mix of emotions and a unique set of challenges. Cancerandwork.ca was developed to help those affected by cancer to manage the challenges of returning to a job, changing work, or looking for work. In this session, Cancerandwork.ca co-directors Maureen, Parkerson, and Dr. Christine Mayhew will explore the website's resources and interactive tools designed for those affected by blood cancer, healthcare providers, and employers. So let me first introduce myself. My name is Natasha Sani, and I'm the BC Community Services Lead at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Canada. I'll be moderating this online event today. Since there are many of you, we invite you to type your questions and comments in the box of your Zoom webinar panel throughout the presentation. We'll have a staff member who's going to be monitoring the questions, and at the end of the presentation, I'll read some of your questions during the question and answer period. Today's presentation will be recorded and will be available for you to listen again on our website. Maureen, if you wouldn't mind flipping to slide 2 for me. So at the LLSC, our mission is to cure blood cancers and improve the quality of life of those touched by blood cancer and their families. We offer support to those affected by blood cancer throughout the blood cancer experience. So do not hesitate to contact the community services lead in your area to learn more. Slide 3, please. As you've surely heard, we launched our brand new website, bloodcancers.ca, last November 2021. Our goal is to better serve the community and offer an improved experience. On our website, you'll find all our past webcasts, our podcast channel, information sheets, practical tools to help you navigate the cancer experience, and much more. And our website is www.bloodcancers.ca. Slide 4, please. Thank you. You can subscribe and listen to our podcast series. It's called The Blood Cancer Experience. It contains a variety of podcasts available to you. includes testimonials from people affected by blood cancer and presentations by experts on a particular subject. These are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you enjoy listening to your podcasts. If you could flip for me, please. All right, it is now time to begin today's presentation, Cancer and Work, Tools and Resources to Help and Support You. You can flip one more. So it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers today, Maureen Parkerson and Dr. Christine Mayhew. Maureen Parkerson is the province-wide vocational rehabilitation counselor at the BC Cancer Agency. She has also been vocational rehabilitation counselor at a public rehabilitation hospital and vocational rehabilitation consultant to insurance companies and the court system. She has instructed and facilitated Service Canada funded programs on job searching and career exploration. Ms. Parkinson has a master's in counseling psychology, is a Canadian certified rehabilitation counselor, and has completed the Certified Return to Work Coordinator program through the National Institute for Disability Management and Research. Dr. Christine Mayhew is an associate professor in the Ingram School of Nursing, Faculty of Medicine at McGill University, and FRQS Chercheur Boursier Junior II. Dr. Mayhew is also an affiliate scientist at the University Health Network at the University of Toronto. She has received awards for excellence in nursing research from Ovarian Cancer Canada, the Canadian Association of Nurses in Oncology, and the Quebec Association of Nurses in Oncology. Thank you both for being here today. You could one more time.
Thank you so much for allowing us to come and speak about tools and resources for cancer and work. It's Christine, Dr. Christine Mayhew, and my pleasure to evolve to share this information. Dr. Mayhew I'm taking the lead today, but for those who would prefer to listen to this in French language, she has taken the lead on providing a French version of this seminar that's available on the Cancer and Work website. So today we're going to talk about an introduction to the Cancer and Work website, so point out some resources and information might be helpful, talk about the 10 steps to return to work, the I Can Work intervention, and job search. At the end of the session, we'll talk about job search for those that are looking at finding another job. So again, in terms of introduction of the Cancer and Work website, it was initially developed coming from a Canadian Partnership Against Cancer grant back in 2016. It consists of 500 pages of content, 8 online tools, 25 expert writers contributed, designed for healthcare providers, cancer survivors, employers. It's the first Canadian website of its kind, but it also links to helpful resources in Canada, but also the best practice across the globe. It's available in English and French, and it was awarded back at 2018 to 2020, the Leading Practice Award by Health Standards Organization. So with the Cancer and Work website, so with this, when we developed the website, it was initially developed by a core team of rehab, nursing, and research specialists, but we did have an opportunity to include expert writers, and which we found very helpful, including getting information from lawyers in terms of frequently asked questions. So that also is available within the website. So within that, the website was designed to actually be parallel. It's designed for survivors, healthcare providers, and employers, and to some degree be parallel in its information in order to, one, enhance sort of better communication between the stakeholders, the survivor, healthcare provider, employer, but also telling people which things they could do within those steps and on those categories in order to be on the same page and ultimately support a successful return to work. So you can see some of the topics are involved from understanding current ability, work accommodations, readiness to return to work, reducing stress at work, and discussing employment vocational programs. So in the website, you'll see that once you click onto the survivors section, you'll see a sidebar, and that's where you will find the various chapters that you can click onto. If you get lost in the shuffle, the best thing to do is start with return to work, stay at work, and click on to the I Can Work 10 steps to return to work. Because the advantage of that is it'll link you in as it describes the 10 steps. It'll say you might be interested in more information here. So that is often probably the best place to start in order to find the information. You can also look in the search bar on various sort of topics. So again, as mentioned, it's designed to be parallel. So when you see in this website, you'll see the survivors and the healthcare providers have the same similar sort of categories. The only difference is in the employer section, we leave out the job search and trying to think on and resources, sort of employment resources, because I'm not seeing that as relevant to the employers. So again, going a little further, one area that might be of interest to you is we have the section called, oh God, I've got my bar on there so I could look at the survivor section called Cancer's Impact on Work and Strategies. And with that, we list the 23 most common side effects of cancer. We describe the symptoms, possible vocational implications, like how that might impact work. We give you some ideas on self-management strategies that you can try out to see if that can improve your abilities or address the challenges. And in the last session, we link it to job accommodation ideas that you might want to try out in order to help you successfully return to work. So within that section, we have a section on emotional and psychological impact. And that was led by two psychiatrists, one, Dr. Alan Bates, head of a psychiatry program here at BC Cancer Agency, and oh dear, I'm having a mental block on the second one, who Dr. Coots, I think it is, in Ontario, and they developed some ideas about emotional and psychological, again, discussing common emotional impact of cancer, listing some ideas, self-management ideas, and also in that section, we listed job accommodation ideas. I can't stress how much about how we need to look at this. Too often as a vocational rehab counselor, people are sitting with anxiety or depression and they may not know about this, and it can negatively impact. It can mimic things like fatigue. It's like a bad cable package. You can see low self-esteem, bad sleep, kind of low mood, apathy. This could be things like depression and even cognitive problems. One of the number one side effect problems of psychiatric disability is, in fact, cognitive problems at the place of work. So I can't relay enough how this is something you really want to look at and get assessed and get addressed, because you might be sitting in the ditch too long. You don't need to. And I'm certainly, after the cancer experience, it's been hard enough, and getting some help in terms of addressing your psychological will give you a better quality of life and ultimately give you a better quality of work life. And I've got a few ideas to help you address that. One specifically is we have a whole area called the workplace well-being section. That came about because a common concern of cancer survivors is the stress at work, sort of feeling that somehow stress negatively impact their work. And somehow if they go back to work, they'll be in that situation. It'll be bad for their health. So with that, we have some ideas about things, everything from changing your job situation, which is relying on communication and negotiation skills, changing your unhelpful thoughts, which is an introduction of cognitive behavioral therapy, and changing your reactions. So again, how can you soothe yourself, or what behaviorals can you engage in order to give you a better work quality life? Again, with this, I would encourage you, if this is a concern, rather than sort of worry about it, take action, learn stress management techniques, because again, it'll help you feel more control of your return to work situation and ideally, hopefully, give you a better work quality of life. As well, in here, we have communication and teamwork section, which is very important. It's very important to keep your healthcare providers aware of your concerns about work, whether they ask it or not, and they may not. Like oncologists might be busy, but it doesn't hurt for them to put, this is what your concerns about return to work, or asking them, when do they think you're ready for return to work, keeping them in the loop about functional challenges so they can do a good job in helping you determine a return to work plan or determine whether you're ready to start return to work. Similarly, with your workplace, good to keep in contact with them. One, to ensure you have a supportive workplace, ensure a soft landing when you return to work, but ultimately also to get some guidance about how they've done return to work in the past or what they're willing to do. Sorry about my phone going off. The other one is communicating with your insurance provider, keeping them in the loop. And in there, some discussion about how you could communicate with your insurance provider to express your needs. They are a resource. They're a resource for help. Like many insurance providers will pay for things like counseling or occupational therapy to help with your cognitive challenges. So often, it's important to communicate with them and say, can you do something about that? And see if they'd be willing to offer this to you. And in this communicating insurance provider, you'll see also some information about how your insurance plan works. So I would encourage you to look at that so you have no unpleasant surprises in the future. And also the last section is talking about roles of professionals. So it outlines the roles of certain professions, like again, for example, occupational therapy, where often people don't know what that discipline does, but what various professions are particularly helpful with return to work. So also in the section, again, this is what we're delighted about, that we were able to have lawyers write some information. And this is under the frequently asked questions, where they answer questions about, do I need to disclose in a job interview? What is my obligation to inform my employer? What information is the employer entitled to request time off? And also discussing what your employer's duty to accommodate you. And similarly, we also have a link to low cost or no cost resources, human rights organizations that you could tap into. So say, for example, your employer is giving you a job back, an accommodated job, and you're not thrilled, the job's changed a bit. I would never say to them, I don't accept this, because sometimes that can be grounds for saying, well, we've accommodated you, our duty is gone. So we don't have to provide you a job anymore. I would encourage you to reach out to an organization like these organizations, and get some good legal advice. Sometimes it's good to know what your legal rights are, particularly with human rights. In a nutshell, an employer has a duty to accommodate you unless they can prove undue hardship. So undue hardship is things like the financial viability of the company. Is it a smaller organization? Might be able to say, is it going against a collective agreement? So again, those subtle things, if you're in that situation, good to educate yourself, not to necessarily put it out there to the employer and say you have even be adversarial, but more in the back of your mind to give you a sense of confidence and know what your next steps are should things not go well. The other section we have for those who are looking for work is changing job and looking for work. And we have one section here talking about, not unusually, some people after cancer experience have change in work priorities. Some people need help in job search. We also have a career exploration section, which was written by the head of the vocational rehab counseling in our local rehab hospital. And she gives lots of great ideas and links on how to go through career exploration for yourself in order to figure out an alternative job or retraining in the future. And, one article on should you stop working, and that's for those who are considering retirement and things to consider. If you stop working, you want to plan. Part of it is also the importance of retirement plan, to see how the things that you're getting from work, can you engage in those in retirement? So as well, as mentioned, we had an occupational therapist, Kyla Johnson, give some general ideas under various sections on job accommodation ideas. Again, with job accommodations, for the most part, it's up to your employer, but that's not to say that you can't try things out and make the business case and say, look, I have fatigue. If I have a power snooze and lunch during my lunch hour, that's the difference between me being able to do more hours for you and being more productive and less likely to make mistakes. But these are good ideas and the good things to check out and try out before you return to work. As well, we have a tools section with lots of helpful tools that we've created. Where you would find that is if you go along the website, you just slide along to the tools section and click on that, you'll find the tools section. And within that, one of the things that we created, initially, this was part of a cancer returning to work guide developed by BC Cancer Agency, and then it's evolved since then for the website. But this is a tool where it asks you to assess what are your current job demands, and what's your assessment of your ability to do that. And it's a very handy thing to go through it. People sort of, it seems fairly time consuming, but when you give the summary page to your physicians, it can be very helpful, because when they're filling out your forms, you have outlined, say, I have problems with thinking in my job, and my job requires a lot of thinking. Say I have a job working as a psychologist, and I have to be creative and think about things off the cuff and under pressure. And if that's an issue for you, you can sort of state that, you know, that's required for you some of the times, and you need to and that needs to be accommodated, or things like that. So it's a great way. At the very least, as a great way to get to know yourself and to help articulate to your healthcare team, your insurance provider, and in some cases employer, the challenges you have. Just even do the first 15 pages. It'll acknowledge what are you having challenges with, but it'll also acknowledge what are you able to do, because that might be the start for the return to work. Like, we'll start with the essential duties of the job that you're able to do as a graduated return to work. We've also developed for the website a Cancerandwork fatigue tracking tool. It's pretty basic, but it's an opportunity for you to assess yourself in different times of the day and determine, is your fatigue, where is it in terms of your energy? And that can be very helpful for a few reasons. It can tell you, it's a graph. You can show your healthcare provider and your insurance provider about your recovery or lack of recovery. Also, it's a chance to quantify. Like, again, when you say to your doctor, I've got tiredness, it's more help for them to see what does your fatigue look like over the day. And so, for example, some people who have depression, for example, may have more tiredness in the morning, and that might give you a hint to maybe you're going to start later in the day in order to start your return to work. Or some people may find that they're tired in the afternoon, and then they need to do the more physically or cognitively demanding tasks in the morning. So these things can be helpful to you. As well, somewhat related, is the Energizer Drainer tool. And this is just a chance, and I would encourage you to try this out, trying out activities and really assessing, okay, what makes me tired and what makes me energized? So say if you're having brain fog, you notice reading an article on your computer makes you tired after half an hour. It's good to assess before and afterwards, because again, that's going to give you a sense of how long can you last before you need to break. As well as, you know, what is going to recharge you? Does going for a walk recharge you? Does taking a nap, listening to relaxation on you know, electronically, something relaxation, would that help you? This is all helpful collateral information that can help you with return to work planning. So I encourage you to try these out and use this. And then again, you can show the graph. As well, we have, this was not developed by us, it was developed by someone who actually had a brain tumor, and he's really made, it's Dr. Michael Fernstein, and he has made a real difference in terms of cancer survivorship, in terms of being fundamental in organizing the development of Journal of Cancer Survivorship. Anyway, this questionnaire was used for people who were discussing their challenges at return to work, related to cognitive concerns. And it asks everything from remembering your name. Are you having problems with your remembering name or objects, completing steps in a task, remembering your train of thoughts? Again, it allows you to sort of answer yes, no. As well, at the end, it asks you to rank them. Again, a very handy tool, and it's used commonly in research, a very handy tool to show your healthcare provider, insurance provider, and say, I'm having challenges. What can we do about this? I'm concerned about this. What can be done? So it's a great communication tool to share with your stakeholders that are helping you with return to work. As well, we have a return to work planner. And again, the information here this is designed for you, between you and your employer. And it's recognizing that return to work plans should be customized to you. It should include the information from your physician, restrictions and limitations that they are mentioning, and recommended accommodations. It includes discussing graduated to return to work over a period of time, how many hours in a day, what's that going to look like, and also talk about who's going to check in with you and how often, who's responsible for that. And we encourage within this return to work planner, the check-in should only just be during your graduated return to work. We do find some people may continue to struggle after they resume full hours. So we encourage, employers to still check in with you post return to work, at least for a few months, because in order to problem solve, in order to troubleshoot, to see what can be done, what can be tweaked at the workplace, or what extra services do you need in order to be successful with the return to work. Now I'd like to talk to you about the I Can Work. And again, if you're going anywhere, you would go to the return to work, stay at work section and just start there. And there's 3 sections, this 10-step program, 3 sections that fall under assessment, addressing challenges, and transitioning to the workplace. So, but before, one major part of the I Can Work is communication. So this used to be a section in itself, but we realized that consistently having good communication between stakeholders, healthcare providers, workplace, and insurance is critical. So with the employer, you want to be asking questions. What do you expect my recovery to look like over time? Things like that. So it helps you in your employer and prepare. Workplace, you want to stay in contact and find out what does return to work look like over time. And with the insurance, sometimes keeping them in the loop. They have expectations about you staying in contact with them. Quite often they do. And there's an opportunity for you to get the care, as I said, for you need in order to help you move forward. But again, that's part of the processing, not to personalize. Sometimes insurance companies will call you regularly. That's not new. They do that with a lot of people. And that's because they know the longer you're off, the less likely it is for you to return to work. So they're wanting you to think about return to work. But, understanding what to expect and be proactive about this can help you feel more control of this process. So again, here's the 10 steps to return to work, everything from understanding factors, and I'll go into them individually. But, and the first step is understanding factors that impact. And this is really an opportunity to take stock. This is a chance for you to look at all the factors that are barriers and facilitators to return to work for you. So the biopsychological being, say, what pre-existing, sometimes, you may be off for cancer, but there are other things that influence you. If you have pre-existing psychological challenges, maybe the cancer is kind of turned up the volume a bit. But it was there already. I worked with somebody who worked in emergency response. He'd had a brain tumor, so he didn't have the cognitive abilities to do it, but he also had a bad back, so he couldn't go back to previous laboring jobs that he'd done in the past. It's good to get a sense of your prognosis. What are you expecting your disease or the symptoms of treatment is going to look like over time in order to plan for that, to get a sense. Neuropathy is an example of this. Having the doctor and said, when do you think my neuropathy stabilized? If I have challenges with that as well, how does your function is affected by the cancer effects, physically, cognitively, emotionally. So again, it's important to take stock of that. As well, we have the person-related factors. So again, some people, after they have cancer, they feel differently about work, and sometimes that can be a barrier return to work or a challenge that needs to be addressed. So what's the meaning of work? Even what you think. Do you think you're going to be able to get back to work? If you don't think, it's important to put those things on the table with your healthcare providers so we can address that. And do you see your work as good or bad? Some people feel work is very healthy and they like the rhythm of the work, they like the connections, the social connections, and some people feel work is bad. And some people are afraid of work stress. And again, that's why we developed the Cancer Workplace Wellbeing section, because that's not an uncommon. And I would, again, encourage you, it's not going away. It's something that requires action on your part, and to demand from the healthcare team or to do things for yourself in order to get better. And even social demographics, like again, in the research, sometimes people that are older may have a harder time to return to work. Those with lesser education may have more challenges, they may be required to go and do more physically demanding jobs with less education, and therefore it can be more challenging. system factors can come into play. Like, again, are there resources, rehab resources available to you? Do you have, physiotherapy through extended care, or, through your community or through your insurance company? Is your family supportive of your return to work, or are they making it hard? So having that addressed is really important. Does your culture support work? Financial support. Are you desperate to get back to work because, and it's related to the economic situation as well, as do you have income replacement, or the economic is you're desperate to get back to work because you're not ready, even though you're not ready because you have no safety net, financial safety net. And the medical system is huge. And I think one example is, say a breast cancer survivor who's been through chemo and radiation and is waiting a number of months or even a year for reconstructive surgery. Well, if it's a very long time, it may mean getting back to work makes sense. But if your reconstructive surgery is going to be in the next few months, then possibly it might be worth waiting for that reconstructive surgery to be over. Again, fully exploring what's available. And it can even be, as I mentioned, a hindrance. Waiting for that MRI to get the all clear can sort of slow down the process. And when I say around legal supports is really important, because that's things about, human rights. In Canada, we have some legal supports to support us with return to work, as well as employment standards. So again, knowing what's available to you. And related to legal support is also unions. Again, union contracts may have language in there or have in-house supports and systems. So I encourage you, if you're in a union setting, often to talk to your union and find out what return to work would look like, or typically. And then the last is even considering the demands of the job. And really big things is not, up here is things like work hours and duty and pay. So again, for somebody who's got sleep disorder, is working evenings or variable shifts, is that going to be a problem? The job demands, the cognitive, psychological, or physical, but also workplace relationships. Do you have the support of your employer and your colleagues? We're seeing that is really important. I find that employers, in some cases, if they like you, they'll move mountains to help you come back. And if they don't like you, they may move mountains in your way. So, seriously looking at the relationship issues and thinking what you can do might be helpful in terms of returning to work. And also, again, accommodations. What is the employer willing to do? Are they willing to give you a graduated return to work? These are important things. If they're not, to communicate with your healthcare providers. So if they're saying, no, we absolutely will not tolerate, say, a graduated return to work, we just can't do that. That's something your healthcare provider may need to know. And also, again, that might be a discussion with human rights to see, do they have a duty to accommodate? So then we move on to the next step, which is assessment, and it's of physical and psychological and cognitive challenges. I often have cancer survivors say, I don't know if I'm ready. So we talked about the Energizer drainers and the fatigue tracking. That's one way you can communicate the challenges. I had a situation where somebody had migraines and he was denied Canada Pension Plan, and he was denied because he said he had migraines. What we need to know with Reflect to Work is the intensity of the migraine. How is it affecting your function? How often it happens? So using self-report tools, besides giving your self-report, but things like pain and fatigue and brain fog, again, those are, if you say I just got brain fog, it's more important to speak in terms of function. Similarly with psychological, getting assessments there through your healthcare team, or looking at your own self-report tools. I'm going to tell you about the FX Mood in a second. And as I mentioned, the cognitive tools, assessing. The gold standard for assessment, but not necessarily available, is two, which is the neuropsych assessment out there, where they can assess you. And they're very helpful in assessing jobs that require moderate cognitive or mild cognitive ability, the nuances of that, and an neuro-focused occupational therapies assessment can be very helpful. I like the neuropsych assessments that are work-focused because, again, they're very much thinking about the job, and sometimes that discipline can be even interacting with your employer as well. So again, as mentioned, the FX Mood, great little assessment, and it was developed by a psychiatrist at UBC. It even has, for people that are having psychiatric problems, or psychological problems, gives you like a bar, and it gives you like go speak to your doctor type of thing. I use this for those that might be talking about brain fog, and I'm worried that they might have anxiety or they might have depression. Because again, as I mentioned, things like depression and anxiety can cause cognitive problems at work. So we want to rule this out because we want to address it, because if somebody's having depression, there are things we can do. With brain fog, sometimes it's a way to recover. Whereas depression, you can be involved in cognitive behavioral therapy. Doctor can be looking at medication approach. We could get you out of the ditch sooner with that, where opposed to brain fog like chemo brain, it might be that you're having to wait and recover and learn compensatory strategies. The next step is, we got assess function, sorry about that. And then we're looking at understand with reflection to the job. So again, the job analysis. In a perfect world, you're going to get the employer's job analysis, because that's very helpful in determining what do they expect, what's their bottom line expectation. You can have the employer do the job analysis. We have an employer one on the website. You can do a job analysis. And if you need help, you could do a job analysis or a task analysis, which is available on the tools section of the Cancerandwork website. Again, after you know the demands and all the barriers of return to work and comparison to the jobs, the next step is to ask for help and say, again, put your cards on the table with people around you, the medical, rehab, and psychological support, and say, what's there to help me become better? What's there to help me support me with return to work? And so our first step is to basically ask the question to everybody's out there. And again, in there, you can source support through, where do you find that? You can find them in cancer services. I'm thinking about mindful meditation is offered in many cancer services and many community programs. The healthcare, looking beyond your cancer world, like in the brain tumor world, for example, I quite commonly refer to outpatient brain injury programs, or what's available in the private and community. I'm seeing many exercise programs, cancer-focused exercise programs, and mindfulness programs and support programs offered by community cancer programs. So again, getting your healthcare team and people around you to provide those. And kind of a related step is to take control of yourself and research yourself. I would really encourage you, again, in the world of insurance, too often I see people at a stage in insurance when the definition for their insurance isn't changed from own occupation to any occupation, and they be cut off benefits. And I think it's really important to see this coming so you can plan. So educate yourself. And we have links to helpful resources, including Wellspring, for example, provides a great video series on insurance. And Wellspring is a national program. You can go on Wellspring Cancer and you can find that. And ways you can manage the symptoms. Again, we have a section in our website, but also looking at other things that you might find, and be familiar with resources for cancer survivors. So again, Cancer Society has a link where you can just go on to that link. I think it's Community Locator, and you can plunk in and say you have problems with fatigue, and they'll pull up some resources that are available to you in your community. And again, look beyond the resources not related to cancer. Again, stress management is stress management. What's available out there for you that you could be learning? The next is identify what foster workplace supports. So again, explore supports to the job. Ask them how they've done return to work in the past. I've seen survivors say, "Oh, they wouldn't do that to me," and then when they're not going to provide me a graduated return to work, and be surprised when they've learned that, yeah, no, employers have done that before. Again, the union, if you're in a union, could be a resource. And again, it's really important to maintain positive contacts with your colleague and your supervisor, only because you want a welcoming environment. Literally, it's a soft landing. If you stay in contact, they're more likely to expect and prepare and be there for you to support, because you want to give yourself the best leg up possible. The next one is to assist and develop a return to work. So again, part of this is about communicating with your doctor about the challenges in order to guide a return to work. And as I mentioned, exploring job accommodations that might be helpful, that can be suggested, that type of thing. And then the next one is preparing for imminent return to work. So again, looking at work-focused symptom management strategies. Something that's overlooked, sadly, until somebody's back to work is sleep. Sleep is one of those things that really has to be put on the table, because if you're having sleep now, it really needs to be addressed, because that could be hard on you. Some people, if it's safe, do a work simulation, and that's a great way to really, two things: assess your ability, but also bring up your work capacity. So if you have a cognitively demanding job, you can sit at a computer for a while and start, for example, reading about stress management techniques, or attending a lecture on brain fog, and things like that. And of note, I never mentioned this previously in terms of resources. Wellspring, for example, offers a brain fog program online nationally if it's not available in your community. And again, even attending those lectures is almost a form of work simulation. And again, from a physical point of view, of course, check out with your doctor, it's going to be okay. But gently, sort of start getting into, okay, for example, say I work as a nurse's aide. Well, maybe at home, I'm going to start getting into a graduated light housekeeping at home in order to build up my capacity. So when I'm going back to work, it's not going to be so hard. Then the 10th step is managing expectations. Very important to get a doctor's note for your employer that indicates that how long your return to work, do you need any accommodations? It's helpful for you, but it's also helpful to refer back to. So at some point, things like fatigue, brain fog, psychological things, pain, they're all invisible, and people maybe forget when you're back. So again, it's important that note for your doctor is something you can refer back to and say, well, according to my doctor, this is the plan I need to follow. And again, this is also for you to be realistic for you, because your heart might be ahead of your head and you really want to get back, but it's hard to predict until you're back. So having your doctor, particularly an oncologist, is very much an expert in terms of the effects of treatment over time. So that can be helpful. And also prepare your family. Like, your family might be used to you being around. They might be used to sort of taking you here, there, everywhere, or picking up this or whatever. But you're going to be tired when you're off work. So now it's time to say, okay, I'm going to be tired now. We need to look about meal prep and ways to support me, because I may not be available in the same way since I have been since I've been off. And then it's important ongoing monitoring, which is I encourage people to check in, have an appointment, say halfway through the return to work plan, to discuss how you're doing. Because if it's too much, then your doctor can say, okay, it needs to be slowed down or reversed, or do you need to stop, or do other services need to be provided to help you with return to work? So again, moving on to job search, my advice for everybody is, if you're worried about your competitiveness in terms of cancer, the best thing you can do is become an expert in job search and overcompensate. Job search is a skill. It's a skill that can be learned. You get good at it, you're more likely to beat out the other person who hasn't bothered. The other thing is, I can't say this enough, once you've done an interview, keep looking for work. So don't stop. Too often I've seen people where they said the interview went great, this is a perfect job for me, and they stop, and then they don't get the job and they're heartbroken. Looking for work is the marathon. It's not the short burst. So just almost in your head, say that job's gone and keep going. And schedule looking for work and reward yourself. Again, being a marathon, it's not always fun to look for returns. So do little treats for yourself. Like if I do this call to this employer at this time, I get to go for a quick walk with my dog, or something like that you find rewarding, in order to motivate you. Because again, you're wanting to motivate yourself over the long haul, or have a coach, a friend or a family member that can coach you along and support you, so you don't get discouraged. As well, with career explorations, I mentioned the career exploration section. This section gives you great links to interests, or what are you interested in, aptitudes, or things. What are things like math and spatial skills and verbal reasoning? These are things that that you do well. Values, these are the secondary things that are important to you in the job. What are the skills you learned, and what's your capacity? These are the things you want to consider. And again, part of career exploration is doing your labor market, which is networking. So too often people will buy into going to school and say, I need that, but maybe they don't need school. I always use an example as, Do you need to go to 4 months of training to learn how to make a sausage? I remember once seeing a sausage making course. Or is that something that you could learn on the job by an employer who's willing to hire you? So you want to do the research. Or more importantly, you want to go to the employer if you think you were training and saying, if I did this training, will this make me more interesting to you? So do your research before you jump into any education. And also do your research in order, it helps you figure out whether you like it. Because again, in your mind, you might think, oh, I love this job. Say, I'm going to go into human resources. I love this job. And then you talk to somebody in the field and you go, oh my God, no way do I want to go in that. So that can be helpful. Or it can reinforce that you want it. And then a big part of career exploration and job search is networking. So 80% of the jobs are not posted. You want to network because ideally you want to get to the job before it's posted so that they don't even have to bother advertising it. It allows you for yourself as a vehicle of career exploration to figure out, is this a good job match? It allows you to foster job search mentors. I've had people that have said, thanks for suggesting I call Bob. I call Bob, he says hi, and also giving them sort of information. I remember our conversation we had, and I thought you'd be interested in this article. In a way, what you're doing is you're creating a relationship, and you're more likely to be real for them. And that when the job comes up, say an employer is going to think, oh, I remember Sandy, who I talked to. She was so nice, and I think, I'd like to work with her. And it allows you to develop a network. So very good questions in terms of networking can be things like, tell me how you got into the field. This is a great question because it's asking the employer or the supervisor or a colleague, or it could be a potential colleague in the future, what do they like or dislike on the job? And it's also without even you having to say anything. It also tells you the back door. It's telling you, oh, okay, well, they got this job here, but before that they did this and this and this. This might save you some unnecessary steps that you don't do. Like you think, oh, before I did that, I worked in this counseling department, and that gave me the skills and learning with this population in order to allow me to work in this place. So, and tell me about a typical day is a great way of learning about the job without saying anything about yourself. So say, for example, you're worried about your physical ability to do something, or you're worried about overtime. You ask them to walk you through a typical day. And that can be helpful in terms of saying, oh, okay, well, they're doing crazy. This is contract work and they do crazy amount of overtime. I don't know if I can do that. And again, a really important question, what do you like or dislike about this? Good to know this before you jump into the job. And then you focus towards yourself and say, given my skills and experience, what jobs do you think I can do? And who hires for such jobs? And can you recommend anybody I contact? So that's very helpful. In terms of information preparation, interview preparation, it's really important for you. And if you don't do it, you need to have a friend or family remind you about what you have to offer. Employers take the cue for you. And if you don't believe in yourself, why would they? So this is the self-esteem time to remind yourself. And again, things like task analysis can be helpful to say, and I always give an example for me is like, I am in awe of people that are organized. And some people will say, oh, that's no big deal. Well, it is a big deal. And some jobs, being organized is a very big deal. So you want to embrace what you have to offer. If you're worried about explaining time off, it's important to practice this ahead of time. You want to get away from the emotional charge that you might be thinking. You need to be truthful, but you could be selective about what you say. So you can always say, I took some time off to reevaluate, took time off, caregiver to look after, I had caregiver concerns, or if that's true, I took to, and again, if you feel that you have to disclose, you can be in a graduated basis. I took for health challenges, but you want to also push it together and spin it positive, which you're resolved now. And it reminded me about how much I feel I can really contribute to this job. Of note, you don't have to necessarily, it's not your cancer you need to disclose about, but rather your disability, and if you need an accommodation. So again, if you don't need any accommodations, there's no reason to disclose. So again, part of the self-esteem part is remind yourself that a gap in work history is only one answer to the whole interview. We used to, in YWCA, where I used to teach before, we used to interview people because they felt they blew the interview. And what they found is they didn't blow the interview. They thought in their head they blew the interview. They may have muddled in one question, but the whole interview the interview as a whole was great. So again, that's helpful, is just you want to move on and not sort of beat yourself up if you didn't answer the question in the best way possible. And in there again, and I can't say it enough, be resourceful. If you're looking for work, we've got some resources here, but ask around. There are lots of free job search programs that are available to you now. In BC, for example, we have Work BC, and they even pay for things like assessments and things like that. So again, it's out there, grab it, because you want your best chances in terms of finding work. As well, on your resume, so I encourage people when they read their resume, always start with highlights of accomplishment. You want to put your best foot forward in order to hook them. Basically, it's like a commercial. You want to have the punchline hook them, so as they go down, if they see gaps in history, they're already hooked on how fabulous you are. But resume should be informed by informational interviews. Like, you literally, that's what you use an informational interview, is to listen to the buzzwords that you need to put in your resume, to tailor your resume. I don't think it's sufficient personally to do one resume for all jobs, unless it's the exact same job you're applying for. I think when you see a job posting or you're looking at job postings, you underline the jobs and make sure it's in your resume. Ensure those verbs that are in the posting or in your resume. If you're trying to tone down a gap, put years, not months. Have somebody proofread your resume with spell check. It's not always easy to see the mistakes, and that's really important. If you don't have somebody, then read it out. Read it out to yourself so you're more likely to catch your mistakes. And I like the hybrid style, which is more of a skills-based. It's talking about your chronological sort of style, and you can Google hybrid style, but not all jobs will accept hybrid style resumes. So you need to research. For example, if you're in the academic field, they expect curriculum vitae, which is basically they want to see the last job and then the job before that, and the job before that. But that's not to say that you can't emphasize some skills in terms of those when you're talking some transferable skills to the new job you're applying to. So I breezed through that quickly in order to give some time for questions. Open to questions now. Of note, thank you so much for letting me present to you. We have some ongoing research in Cancerandwork, and the best way to find that is the events page, as well as we have developed a course for your primary provider, your family doctors. So again, love if you would share that with your doctor, which helps them do a good job in terms of helping you with return to work. So if you're willing to share that, that would be very much appreciated. So questions?
Thank you for sharing your expertise and insight with all of us today. So we're going to go through the question and answer period. So if you haven't already done so, feel free to pop in any questions into the chat box, and we'll try to get through as many questions as possible today. So the first question we have here is increasingly concerned that when I return to work, accommodations agreed to or other may not be respected by the employer. How do I ensure that there's reasonable accountability on this? And what are my resources or recourses aside from my professional association?
It's two things. As I mentioned, it's really important for the doctor to be clear. And that's something you can always report back. You can always sort of say, look, my doctor's sort of very clearly. I've often, with the return to work groups I've done, we've talked about saying, well, I'm concerned if I don't follow the return to work plan or the accommodation, it might affect my productivity. So that's selling it. My doctors recommend this. And sometimes people say I'm more concerned, for example, like with fatigue, it might be more likely to make mistakes. This return to work plan prescribed by my doctor is there for a reason. And I think ultimately for your union, you talk to your union if they're not adhering to this. And this is where if it's, ideally you want to work this out with the employer. It's a negotiating and to say I'm concerned, but if they're not listening to it and absolutely required, then I think that is when you're reaching out for human advice from human rights specialists, if it's absolutely needed, in order to help you figure out how to negotiate this.
Thank you, Maureen. We have another question here. What happens if you go back to work, but then realize it was a mistake and need more time off completely? Is it easy to switch back? How common is this? And how do insurance companies view this? As a graduate, I a graduated return, sorry, is less attractive to me since I make more money on long-term disability than working 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah. So there's two parts of the question. The first one is that the first one, actually, I get doctors that say graduated return to work trial. The reason why they do that is they're kind of managing expectations, which is we really ultimately can't predict how people are going to return to work. So if they say trial, it's kind of a saying, well, to give it a try, but it needs to be assessed. And I think it can be helpful for the doctor to say it needs to be assessed at this point. And then you go back to the physician who's given that and have a discussion and say, I don't think there's some challenges here. And talking about, should this be slowed down? Should the hours be rolled back, or should you stop? And ideally, this is where I think it's important to do preparation ahead of time. Like, I think we can't totally prepare for it. And again, there's a the longer you're off, it's harder to go back. You want to, but at the same time, the more you can prepare ahead of time and see it coming and take control of this ahead of time, the less likely this is going to happen. But I think it is a bit of a guessing game. So return to work trial, talking to your doctor, naming it as such, and going back and having your doctor and saying it needs to be slowed down. They need another note to say it needs to be slowed down. Okay. And then the second question, again, remind me, it was to do with more money. That's a tough one. That's a tough one, the more money in the end of the day. But again, you have to be mindful that two parts, again, longer you're off, the harder it is to go back. You want to, sometimes employers get cranky if it's prolonged. No guarantee, they have a duty to accommodate you, but that can be a bit of a challenge if you're off too long. The disadvantage is sometimes when you're off, not only do you lose the relationships to your workplace, but you're getting de-skilled in terms of the knowledge that might be involved in the job, or somebody might be filling you in. So it's very personal judgment of that, but there's the argument to be looking at return to work sooner, really knowing ahead of time, are you ready, ideally as much as you can, but at the same time weighing the pros, the cons, which is the longer you're off, it might be challenging when you get back.
What is the best way to handle lifting COVID restrictions at work? So no more mask mandates and otherwise.
Again, I would talk to your healthcare profession about that. I think, I've had people where with COVID mandates, possibly nothing prevents you from wearing masks, but that's a discussion you have. The first question, maybe for your own reassurances, are you at any more risk? Adverse sort of effect of COVID and things like that. And that could be written as a job accommodation for you. Do you need to be in an isolated place? It starts with a conversation with your doctor or your oncologist, because I think the oncologist might be the best person to talk about blood counts and are you at any more risk or adverse effect because of COVID.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We have one more here, or a couple more here. Sorry. What help is available to navigate employer disability and government disability benefits?
So in Cancerandwork website, I'm not sure about the employer. We do have two sections, under the insurance section and also under the finances section. We talk about insurance in there. So we talk about short-term disability, long-term disability. There's even an article on navigating an insurance in there. But I would read the legal section as well, which talks about what to expect in terms of return to work.
Okay. And how much should I tell others about my illness and limitations?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, because I forgot to address that in the presentation. You have a certain degree of obligation to your employer. Actually, looking at the lawyer's question, more than I expected with your employer, your employer. But some of this it's very personal to your work situation. Who needs to know, what's the impact of knowing. So we have a great article called The Power of Disclosure in the website under the communications section under the employer. And it helps you kind of guide who and under what circumstances. At the very least, a lot of people reach out, they'll come up to you and they'll say, how are you? And if they know about your cancer, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that. With a colleague, if you don't think it's important, you can always say, and I encourage this, say, thanks for asking, because you're wanting to acknowledge that they're recognizing you and they're reaching out. But do you mind if we don't talk about it? I'm trying to sort of move forward, put it behind. Most people are relieved when you say that, but you don't want to put people down if they're at least initiating a kindness to you. So that's your pat answer if you have to. But I would encourage that power disclosure article to read that, because it gives you the pros and cons.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maureen. That wraps up our questions for today. If you wouldn't mind changing the slide for me.
Yes.
Thank you. So before we sign off for today, I would like to mention that we have one more presentation being offered this week in the Your Life After Cancer series. You can visit bloodcancer.ca to learn more about these conferences and register if you're interested. And sorry, can you flip the slide for me? So we would like to thank Kite, a Gilead company, and Pfizer for making the Your Life After conference possible. And sorry, one more flip for me. And finally, please remember that we are here for you. You can reach us by email or by visiting our website, bloodcancer.ca, or by calling us toll free. Please note there's going to be a short survey sent out to all participants after this presentation. Please take a moment to respond to help us plan beneficial events for you in the near future. Thank you all again for being with us, and take good care of yourself. Have a great day.
Thank you all.